it's been 16 years is a good long life for a cat. So
that's a long time.
Yeah. My daughters were both very young when we brought them home.
Yeah.
But have one other cat that's a year old and 2 dogs. So it's a farm here.
All you have to do is go outside. You can find plenty more cats, I'm sure.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the cold open right there. Just go outside, get a new friend, bring it in the house, feed it, good to go.
That's networking.
That's great. Welcome everybody to the NerdBrand podcast. I'm your host, Jason, and there's another Jason. And there's a Mitch, and then there's John. So as we get started on the show, I want to give this Jason some time to introduce himself, tell us about his passion, and you've got the floor, sir, for however you need to know who you are.
No, I appreciate that, Jason. My name is Jason Metz. I've been in marketing and advertising for about 17 years now, just turned 40, which is beyond ridiculous. And my passion is building business. I've always been a hustler, kind of grew up in a family of entrepreneurs and small business owners. And I've always been a guy who's just trying to find the angles and identify the white space and keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening in culture. I'm motivated by success. I'm motivated by money. And I found early on in my career that if you can help marketing and advertising agencies grow, and if you can help businesses better engage with their audiences, there's money to be made. So that was my career choice, and it's become my passion. I'm from New Jersey. I asked Jason before we started if I'm allowed to curse on the podcast, because that's how I talk, but I'm going to do my best to stay as behaved as possible. And I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia. When the pandemic hit, we decided to come out here. My wife grew up around here, and we've got a lot of family and friends. So I'm here drinking my coffee, and I'm representing Waffle House.
Oh yeah.
So go Atlanta.
There you go. That's probably quite a culture shock for you, Jason, from New Jersey to Atlanta.
It's a culture shock for the people in Atlanta who have to deal with it. I'm a chameleon. I can exist anywhere, but it's definitely a culture shock for those who encounter me.
No, I think that's probably it. It's people like us who work in advertising and thrive in it and enjoy it. We tend to be able to kind of meld in with a group of people that we just happen to be with, regardless of where they're from. We find things to talk about. We find common threads.
Yeah.
I think that's part of what draws us into this business a little bit. You kind of adapt and become a part of what they are.
I think you have to be interested. Right. Being in our business, you have a natural curiosity, a natural inquisitiveness. And I think being interested genuinely endears yourself to people of all stripes. And I don't think it's something that we have to do intentionally. I think, if you're built a certain way, that's the way you know how to live.
Yep. And that's actually very on topic for this episode, because it's the rules of networking. A lot of people have done that, said that before, but the caveat to this is listen to learn, not to respond. There's a lot of folks that just kind of listen to respond, and they just vomit a lot. And you're like, you didn't really hear what I was saying. Or they just start the conversation and you're like, I didn't say anything yet. So, because networking is not to go in and make a sale. It's not, at least in my opinion. It's to go in and meet people. It's the backbone of how businesses, meet these people to fulfill what you guys just said. So that's today's show. And Jason, thank you for introducing yourself, or ourselves. I don't know. It's just funny to me that somebody else named Jason. So I feel like I'm talking in third person. So if it gets weird, I'm sorry. But right now, let's go with Mitch's tidbit. Mitch, you got a tidbit?
Yeah, and I've got to give Jonathan a little bit of credit for this, so you kind of pass this along. Is as it in the Netherlands, Coca Cola is doing a can customization promotion, where basically you can go online and they're removing their logo from the Coke cans, and in that space is how do they put it? It's like, it's a promise you're making, a promise you make about yourself, something you're looking to improve or to make life better for the people around you, so to speak.
Can I share my screen, or will that mess things up?
I think you can share your screen. Let me see.
Please do. A visual aid would
I'm
be
willing
nice.
to try. Yeah, because I know it'd be easier to
Yeah.
describe it.
Yeah, go ahead, John. I think it's active.
Yeah, give me a second. All
Yeah,
right.
there it is, right there.
It's
Look,
kind of
you see
like
in this
their other share a Coke campaign, but go ahead, Mitch.
Right. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of the beer companies did something. I mean, it wasn't motivational, but it was like they had like a space or something on the can where you could, like, if you're at a party, you could write your name or something in there. But this is more motivational. This is more, I think in the age we're in right now with COVID and everything, this ties in with trying to, people kind of taking the opportunity to be self-aware. Think about how they can take this time to maybe look at the people around them and how they can not just make themselves better, but by doing that, make the people around them, make things better for them. And they have the examples here. You go online and you can choose your promise or your statement, and you can fill in the blank on the can. And again, the thing that's most shocking, if that's the right word, is that nowhere on the can now, on those cans, is Coke.
Yeah. Yeah, the colors, but you don't have the name.
Right. And what's interesting though is it's not like they're mass producing these cans and putting them up on the shelf. You go online and customize the can and order the cans that way. So it's not like mass produced. It's not like you're going to walk into Kroger and you're going to see walls of Coca Cola with no logos on the cans and with these motivational messages. Right. That's what I think is interesting about it. But it's they're calling it a vehicle to spread positivity. And you go to the website, you pick your statement, you fill in the blank, and you can send it to someone. Because you can see down there on the lower right by each can, to Julie from Philippe, to Becca from Nuno, to Fred, love mom. It's really interesting. I mean, the nice thing, and we've talked about this before, when you've got the kind of brand equity and longevity that Coke has, you can get away with doing some really out of the box things.
Yep.
Because people trust you. There's a built-in trust that, that you're not going to do something stupid. Not to say it hasn't been done.
Well, I think it's interesting that, for a lot of businesses, smaller businesses that may be able to take something away, is find something that works and then just kind of, tweak it for another campaign, because they did this exact same thing with a hashtag share a Coke, where you put somebody else's name on it. You went online, you put their name on it, and you had it sent to them. So they're not doing anything that they haven't done before, but it's still just, to me, it's just as impactful, and, maybe a regional thing, since now they're doing it throughout Europe.
Yeah. Do you think that any of you, here's a question that's for everybody. Do any of you think that they could do that here and the audience in this country would participate and do this?
Well, what's interesting is I found a slightly older story that involves Katy Perry, where it was based on the whole idea of New Year's resolution. And she had her resolution, and there was a blank, and you could fill in the blank as far as what your resolution was for the coming year. So it was done, I think, on a smaller scale and with a less broad message in the States. But this is, to me, is much more open-ended. Maybe, is that the right word? Because I mean, a New Year's resolution is based upon, after New Year's, it's, you know how it is. It's long gone. It's like when people decide to join a gym in January, by February, they don't show up.
By February? Dude, it's like January 2nd. I'm like,
well,
what?
Okay, I was generous. But yeah. This is more open-ended and maybe has a longer shelf life.
Can I give a skeptic's point of view?
Go for it.
Sure, please do.
I'm always the devil's advocate.
I like a contrarian.
I'm always a contrarian. Even if I don't believe it, I have to be a contrarian just so that I can push back a little bit. So here's how I view stuff like this. First of all, yes, it could and would, I think, definitely work in the US. People, we all kind of think that we're the center of the universe, right? And this type of personalization at scale basically empowers people to feel like they're the center of the campaign. They can make the can as relevant to themselves as possible. So it taps into I think just a certain facet of human psyche, especially I think within our culture, where it's kind of look at me, I'm super important. Whatever I'm feeling or thinking or aspiring to, the whole world should know about it.
Exactly.
So it's positive in a way. I mean, doing something like this actually enables and empowers people to fulfill that, I think, psychological need. Especially, we live in this culture of kind of peer pressure, and we all want to be the center of attention. But I think my skeptical point of view on the flip side is a brand like Coca Cola knows that, and they're actually now making us the marketing platform. Right, it's customer as marketer, right? By empowering people to literally find a vested interest in carrying their brand in their hand proudly, thinking it says something about themselves. What Coke realizes is they're all advertising for me for free and doing it proudly. And we live in this age of user-generated content where, because of the internet, because of social media, because of the ubiquity of being able to use this device as, a professional recording product, we all have the ability to create and share content whenever, wherever we want. And again, we think it says something about ourselves when we do that for brands we love. And it does. It makes us feel like we're part of something, like we're validated, like we're not alone in the universe. But smart brands, I call it actionable earned media. They find the way to trigger it within us to be creators on their behalf and think we're doing something in our own best interest, when really that just means they don't have to spend money to create content or advertise, or at least not as much money, because we're doing it for them.
Yeah,
it's an Instagram. It's the Instagram methodology.
Yeah.
Or more generally, it's the social media methodology. Taking advantage of that fact that people want to be up front and out in front. They want to present themselves to the larger world, that think that their voice matters, that their existence means something, and making them brand advocates, making them influencers. Basically, it's that same kind of.
But if everybody wins, does anybody actually lose? If the person customizing the can and carrying it around proudly feels validated, feels like they're part of something, and if the brand reaps the rewards of free advertising, everybody kind of wins. So it's all good.
And let's be honest, can't be mad about that.
I don't know. I'm a little tempted to put in there, like, I promised to Jason just for you, or you're right, it's time for me to Jason, or I'm not the best at Jason, but I'll try. Like, what that looks like. It's just kind of me. So
to me, what's interesting, this kind of goes back to, we kind of leaned into it a little bit. That's the fact that, there's nothing new under the sun. Nope. Every idea we come up with has pretty much been influenced or inspired by something else. Everything. It's funny to me that good advertising, good marketing always boils down to some translation of the strength of word of mouth.
Yep. 100%.
And word of mouth is basically making your customers be your largest advertising voice.
100%.
It's still a first principle.
And the more authentic you can make it feel for them, the more apt they are to do it, and to do it voluntarily and happily.
Mm-hmm. Especially taking advantage of social. It needs to be, it can't look like an ad. That user-generated content does so well because it doesn't feel like an ad experience necessarily.
Yeah, let somebody else toot your horn instead of you.
Well, it gives you more credit. I mean, if somebody else is talking about you and you're not talking about yourself, it gives you credibility. So it doesn't matter as much what I say about myself as it does someone else.
Yeah.
Right. Even if you're incentivizing them to do it. Right. I mean, there's always a game to be played. Right. Now, for some brands, I don't know, call it Harley Davidson, Patagonia. There are brands out there that genuinely embody a certain spirit, and they have absolute fanatics who wear it as a badge of honor. Not all brands can engender that kind of passion, either because they just don't have something worth being passionate about, or because maybe they don't deserve it. They haven't earned it. But those brands can still trigger that type of response by incentivizing people through a contest, through a promotion, to almost make it as though they are passionate about that brand and they are proudly carrying that brand forward, when in reality, they're kind of sort of just doing it to win the free year of ice cream. Yeah. But then they can they can project that back to the world and say, look, we're loved. Look at all these people creating all these great things around us. They're proudly sharing our brand. But would they have done that without that promise of the free year of ice cream? And again, does it even matter? Because perception is reality. And when you project this idea that people are passionate about us, and then as long as you continue to fuel that and perhaps reward that, then maybe they do become passionate about you because you did that in the first place. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting that we live in this world where old school advertising doesn't work anymore. You have to figure out how to generate positive word of mouth and empower the people to carry your message forward. And there's all different ways to do it. And then once you've done it, as long as you can continue to live up to it and reward that participation, I think it's possible for brands to literally reinvent themselves, whereas that never could have happened pre-social media, pre-internet.
That's really a good point. I mean, it's one of the things we talk about is, I mean, in our brand, one of our philosophies, I mean, you want to be real with people. You have to be, there's an authenticity threshold. People will buy in if they feel like it's real and that the exchange is worthwhile, that what I'm giving you and what I'm getting in return balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think in some respects with the whole, Instagram influencers and kind of the controversy that kind of stirred up over the last year or so about the authenticity in that. I mean, there's been a lot of skepticism.
Easy
now.
for you to say.
Yeah, very much so.
I think for me, there's always, none of us got here without sort of faking it till we made it. And at some point you're faking it so well that you're no longer faking it, you're actually doing the thing. And I think that's, any brand that's going to get from A to Z is going to have to, not in a disingenuous way, but is going to have to fake that we're special. We do have value.
Yeah.
You got to find a way to put it up front and get, like you said, get people excited. Yeah, they might just want that free year of ice cream, but you might actually latch them on to your brand and they do become a genuine believer. And it's that kind of just that initiator that got them through the door.
By any means necessary. I mean, we all want that free year of ice cream. I'll speak for myself. I want the free year of ice cream.
Oh, there's a local ice cream maker around here that this is years ago. We approached them and I was like, can you guys take ice cream and take jalapenos and kind of put that together? And they were like, we don't really know. And it took a few tries, but it was the weirdest thing to eat ice cream. And you're like, this is good vanilla. And because it would kick
they
in.
do that?
You know what? I forget the name of the company, but they did it masterfully. And I was just like, you guys got to figure out how to do that. And we kept it for and this is going to sound terrible. It sounds like we just are not good eaters, but we kept it for 6 months in a freezer and it still kicked after you bit in and ate it, so I don't know.
It's like chili. Longer it sits, the better it gets.
Yeah, I guess. But anyway,
you guys, not to get off on a tangent. Are you guys familiar with Jenny's ice cream?
No.
You guys got to check out Jenny's ice cream. I'm not a paid advocate, but I'm a genuine fan.
He's an influencer.
They recently released everything bagel flavor ice cream. They have all kinds of interesting flavor concoctions. And again, I'm a guy from Jersey, so I love my bagels. So when they came out with that just put it over the top. But Jenny's ice cream, check it out.
I definitely.
It's talking about that. It's a rabbit trail, but in Japan, it's very common to find ice cream flavors that aren't usual chocolate, vanilla, the sweeter or fruity flavored. I mean, they're sushi flavored ice cream and wasabi ice cream. Yeah. That's very, very common over there. What's that?
I said, let's just stop.
Yeah.
No.
Anyways, yeah, it's probably a good time to move on and let's get into the networking thing a little bit here. Because unless John, you because I know you're sharing your screen, unless you got an to share.
I'm going to share this. I just came across it this morning. Just a quick little conversation. We got the Super Bowl coming up, obviously. It's always a big debate among advertisers and just the average person. Like, why do people pay so much for a Super Bowl ad? Is it really that effective? And what could they do with that money? Digiday did an interesting little thing with breaking down what could $5.5 million, which is the estimated cost of a 30-second spot for the Super Bowl, what could that buy you in kind of a digital environment. And just looking at a few of these, like 3.7 million paid ad clicks on Drizzly display ads, 2.8 million clicks for a CVS search ad, 275 million impressions on YouTube. So I thought it was an interesting thing that they broke that down. And to me, I feel like the Super Bowl, I always have this debate every year. I think the Super Bowl is still, if you have that money, it's still one of the absolute, if not the best advertising platform in the world, depending on who you're going after, but in general. But
you have such a large audience.
Mm-hmm. It's a large audience, but there's also the communal factor. There are very few moments in our culture anymore where we come together and consume something in real time, right? Everything is on demand, but this is one of those few real-time moments that still exists where the context within which most people watch the game is with friends, with family. You're paying attention, and it's so hard to get people's attention these days. But yeah, I agree from a real-time opportunistic perspective. That level of attention at one moment in time around something that's so culturally important to our country. If you have the money to spend, I get it. You have to do well. If the ad sucks, it's a total waste of money, and that's a totally different story.
It's
a whole other conversation too.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
That's an actual podcast episode right there. Let's talk about Super Bowl ads that suck.
That's like 97% of them, and that's the problem, because I think 97% of all ads suck, Super Bowl or otherwise. So that's incumbent upon that brand and that brand's agency partners to understand the zeitgeist and what people care about and what they're gonna watch, and not mock, because it's also a great opportunity to be mocked and to actually do damage to your brand. But if you get it right, there's nothing like that audience.
Yeah, well, I just saw an example on Twitter this morning that two brands that are running spots in the Super Bowl use the same stock video footage.
Oh, great!
Which nobody can really shoot original footage in the past year.
But you know what? That's such a cop out. Nobody ever needs to be using stock footage. We just talked about earned media, right? Your audience is creating content every single day. Every brand out there has the ability to collect and curate and get rights to user-generated content. That's the stuff that people want to consume.
Especially the big ones.
If you don't know how to do that as a brand, and if your agency can't guide you in how to curate and collect and capitalize on free content that your fans are putting together, then they deserve to suffer.
Yeah,
that's the truth.
Mitch and I were in a meeting. We were discussing how this place could curate content, and we didn't get too far down the road into that because we only had limited time. But I just kept thinking in my head, I'm like, it's user generated, that's how we're going to do it. But I wasn't going to lay out another strategy because I already could tell they're like, we don't know what this is, and there's so many of them out there that are so far behind that it's almost like you'll fire hose them if you are trying to explain it and take them down that path, and you just kind of have to steadily guide them very slowly. And that's kind of what we do. We try to first this first, and Mitch is good at that. So
I'm big on first principles. Get those down, then you work on the bigger things. It's a cliche, but don't try to swallow the whole apple one bite at a time.
And here I am trying to swallow two apples at one time, to each his own.
Well, and the bigger the company, the worse it is, because you have competing agendas, and it's trying to get everybody on the same page and march in the same direction. It's bad enough with a smaller business, let alone a large one. But I think what's interesting about the Super Bowl ads is it just me. It used to be when the event of the Super Bowl ads became kind of a thing of its own, another reason for people to watch. It seems to me that the ads were better. There was a large variety. There was more, I guess I want to say risk taking, but it was the entertainment value of the ads to me was much better than it is now.
I think hindsight is 2020. I think we all have this kind of sense of nostalgia for the way things used to be. And I think we all tend to look at things from our past with rose-colored glasses. And I also think that it may have spoken to us more back then. And, what the kids like today may not speak to us as much. Because I don't,
Yeah, I think it has.
You
a
show
lot
me
to
what
do
a 20 or 30-year-old likes. I'm like, that's
Good
not
luck.
good.
I think it has a lot to do with that because I have vivid memories of certain Coca Cola commercials and Budweiser, and you know, a couple others that I could probably think of if I thought harder. But I don't have any from the last 5 years. You know, and I think that's not necessarily. It could be that the commercials have gotten less interesting, or less, you know, whatever.
Well, I'm,
Less relevant to
I-
you.
Right.
well,
Yeah.
I'm not.
Could be me,
I'm, I mean,
yeah.
I'm still not sure they stand out individually like they maybe once did, and I wonder if maybe part of that is because the advent of the Super Bowl ad kind of became a thing. So
Could it
that
also
sort of
be
became.
because nothing stands out like it used to because we're inundated with so much stuff,
Yeah.
so much
Very
noise,
good point.
so much.
Very good
I read a
point.
stat. We on average see 5,000 ads a day. We're exposed
Sorry,
to
people.
5,000 moments of somebody trying to sell us something every single day. So we can't possibly keep track of all the stuff we see. Whereas in the past, you know, it was simpler. You were exposed to a lot less and things had a lot more meaning and you could hold on to them, I think, a lot better.
Yeah, it's like
The-
it's
the-
like the
the-
halftime show. You could remember, like, well, does anybody here remember when Prince did the halftime show? What Super Bowl was that? You know he did it, but
Mhm.
you don't really remember which one. And I think for those of us that are older, we remember Janet Jackson's "Oops" that happened because that was like shocking.
But that's why you remember it.
Then that's why exactly, and that's the thing. It's like that shock can get you to maybe remember it, but I'll tell you this: I don't remember what Super Bowl it was. I don't know what year. So you know, it's even got to the point where the shocking stuff is sort of like, you know, because there's another one coming in probably 30 seconds or something. You know,
Certainly
To
2020.
Jason's point. To Jason's point, there's just so much background noise. There's a cacophony of stuff that you're bombarded with now. It becomes background noise, and it's harder to. It's made it hard for brands to differentiate. To stand
It's hard
out
to
and
cut through. It's just really hard to cut through, which goes back to that, you know, that notion of authenticity and being something real and definable, so that, you know, when people interact with you, they come to expect something of you. So you don't have to bring something new to them all the time. They actually identify with you because they feel grounded in something. Whereas the rest of our lives, it's so scatterbrained and there's just so much stuff. We're desperate for that sense of connection and being grounded in something.
yeah, that's a great segue. I'm just go ahead, Mitch.
No, I would just say, I mean, and again, going back to our philosophy at NerdBrand's philosophy, unless you hit an emotional chord, you're just noise.
Yeah.
Unless you can throw facts in their head, you can bombard them visually and audio with noise, but you've got to hit them in the heart before they're going to act. Before it matters, you have to make it matter to them on a personal level.
Yeah.
And that's when that's when a person acts.
Yeah. Have you guys seen the movie Hitch? Any of y'all
course.
seen? All of you? Okay, all the
Yeah.
heads are doing that. Okay, great. The opening scene in the movie Hitch is worth watching, but I kind of want to reframe it instead of trying to like swoon a woman off her feet. Let's think about prospects or customers or the audience, right? So one of the things that stuck out to me was like, most of what you're saying ain't coming out of your mouth, you know? So when you go to a networking event, since it's on topic of that, you know, we kind of go into the room and we immediately want to kind of just run out with this is who I am. It's what I do. This is my passion. Here's my 3 bullet points. I'm done. Your turn. Nobody responds.
Yep.
That's not going to get a response. And then you talked about earlier, Jason, where it's like, you know, we have this need to feel, you know, affirmed. We are just, you know, a little bit of narcissism. We all have it, you know. So it's a really difficult thing. Networking is hard because you have to do the opposite of that. You got to put somebody else first, you know, so you got to really listen to them and allow them to speak. And so another thing in the Hitch movie that really got me is when he was trying to teach him how to kiss. And he was said like, he's like, I go 90, you come 10, you know, that kind of a thing. Do y'all remember that when they were on that?
Yeah.
So that's sort of how to approach, like, let that person do do you let that person do the 90 and you do the 10, or do you do the 90 and they do the 10? Like, you have to know when to kind of lean in, lean out, I guess is what I'm saying when it comes to networking, because it is about listening. It is about that other person.
Don't kiss people at networking events.
Yeah. Don't kiss people at networking events. That's not what I'm saying. It's like,
Awkward.
That's where I went wrong.
yeah. It's like,
super awkward.
Yeah, it's like that movie. It's like, you overzealous. I told you. Yeah. Do you guys have any, without naming names, do you have any horror stories at all from networking events that you had in the past that you want to share, or do you want to plead the fifth?
Not really been that many. I've done more networking this year, but digitally, you know, and yeah, I can't think of any horror stories. Give me a second.
Well,
I can't think of any either.
I remember that when we went to Jason, where there's a guy who is this young man. He had all the all the energy in the world. Very nice young man. But basically, he was trying to sell a pyramid scheme. It was one of those pyramid things. He had a book, and he wanted you to buy the book, and then he, the conversation goes on, and, come to this meeting, and you'll find out more about it. And his eyes were lit up and sparkly, and he was excited, and it's like I just wanted to take him aside and say, look, I know your intentions are great, but I'm not quite sure.
Wait, he was trying to sell you a pyramid scheme. How is his intentions great?
He was young and naive and didn't really completely.
Was his name Bernie Madoff? Counter Bernie Madoff? No.
He was too young to know better. You know what I mean?
You're doing a bad thing.
He was too young to know that that's what he was part of.
Well, actually,
he was so bought in. It made me sad.
I think, not necessarily the too young part, but the not knowing part. I think that's really interesting, Mitch. I think, I've been going to networking events, I don't know, for the last 15, 20 years, since I, basically was in college. And, I've had a lot of success at networking events. I've spoken at a lot of conferences, and that's helped me build my profile and meet some great people. I think that the worst part of networking events is most people don't know how to network. And most people who go to those events, they think that they are there to sell themselves, or they're just there for the free food and to get away from the office, whether they're junior people at the company or even senior people at the company. I can't tell you how many networking events I've been to where, the people who you would think are adept networkers are just sitting on couches while everything else is happening around them, with their head down in their computer doing work. And it's like, why are you here? Right. And I think that's the challenge is, I grew up and I've always been very business minded. So I'm not going to networking events to make friends. I'm not going to networking events to eat the crappy food. I'm not going to networking events even to learn most times. I'm going to networking events to network. And I don't find reciprocity, I think, from most of the people at most of the events I've been to. They don't know how to network. They're not interested in generating business for themselves or for their company. They're just there because they're there. And it becomes real tough to find those people who are actually there to have stimulating business conversations, because that's what it's all about. That's why we do it. That's why we wake up in the morning and sit on crowded planes and eat crappy food and miss our families and sleep at uncomfortable hotels. That's the game. So you would hope that everybody you interact with at those events are there for the same reason and know how to do it, like actually know how to get value out of that experience.
Yeah, a big benefit for me in networking events was I'm an introvert. I know it may not appear that way, but I am. Like, I hate walking up to a person I don't know to start a conversation that I know has to be somewhat about me, but I got to trigger in them to tell me about them. And then you always meet that person that's like if I could think of a horror story, it's probably about every person I've ever met where you've got to pull out of them like, what do you do and why? It's like pulling teeth. And then you meet the people that are very engaging and it makes it so much easier. So for me, though, it was more of like to sharpen social skills, to start to learn to when to listen, when to respond, what those cues are and how to navigate that. And that's why it's like you said, you don't go there to sell yourself. You're meeting you hopefully meet like-minded people. To the food comment, though, you're right. There's some food that you're just like, who thought of that? And then Mitch and I, we had a networking event. It was at Roosters, and I was like, free chicken, and it was great. But sometimes I think you're right, though. People go because of that. They don't.
Oh, it's a social gathering.
Yeah. Most interesting.
You get out of the office.
Yeah, most interesting guy I ever met at a networking event was a magician. And you want to talk about a guy that could show you his business card creatively? It's like blank paper, and then there it is. And it's like there's everybody's got their thing, and yeah, I've met so many people that sell insurance, people that are in finance. There's always that. I won't say the company names, but they are there because they're told to go, and I feel bad for them because that they're like, oh,
Well, it's even worse. It's typically those companies that pay more to be there, right? They're sponsoring it. They have their little booth set up, but nobody goes to those events to be sold to. So it's so counterintuitive that's how a lot of these events are sold, by charging money to morons who think they're going to actually make money by selling. And I don't think it ever works. I mean, the companies that I've spoken to, that I've met at these events, the event organizer has to force people to go to, the outside area where all these booths are set up. You only go to the booth because they have free Starbursts, or,
is that all it takes?
Or like one of those stupid little like mini fans that you're going to carry around for 2 minutes and it's going to break. You're like, why am I holding this thing? You just throw it in the trash. It's just a circle jerk. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but it's a circle jerk.
Oh no,
you get away with that one.
Well, I mean, if there's any value to it, it's an opportunity for you to hone your skill, to practice your technique, to practice your, it's like when Jonathan and I, or even Jason and I, are in front of a client. I mean, yeah, you're there for a very specific task, but it's still an opportunity to sharpen your game, to try some approaches. Maybe maybe I should come at it from this angle. Maybe I should really explain this benefit in this fashion. It's always an opportunity to grow a little bit and get better at, like Jason said, draw people out, to get them to talk, because that's always a trick. You always want to get them talking about themselves. And when on big advertising pitches, I've always been kind of counterintuitive in that, you're there to show off. Okay. I think the value is, your dog and pony show is one thing. If you can midstream get the client to start revealing about themselves, if you haven't finished the present, screw it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You've done your job. You've accomplished the task.
Oh yeah.
You're doing what you're saying. What's that?
Should brands host networking events and take advantage of that, or is that way too self-serving in your all's opinion?
Host them for what purpose and for what audience?
That's the question.
Yeah.
Like you would. I mean, it's a question to ask like you would for any other medium. Why are you there?
Yeah.
What's in it for you?
What I find is smart people, and especially smart business-minded people, actually love talking about themselves, especially if they think there's value that the person they're talking to can help them. The business that we're in, the brands we work with, these guys are challenged to accomplish a lot with fewer resources than ever, with smaller budgets than ever, with more pressure than ever, more higher expectations. Brands are in a tough spot. So if you're a brand manager or VP of marketing or a CMO at really any organization, you're facing so much competition. There's so much disruption. There's so much change going on in culture. These people are desperate for information, and the only way, and again, if they're smart and they're experienced, they know the only way to get information from somebody else is for them to first express themselves, talk about their challenges, their problems. So the tack that I've always taken, whether at a networking event or if I'm pitching a prospect, or even to your point, Mitch, in a presentation setting, I want to make it as safe and comfortable as possible for that person to talk about their problems.
Exactly.
Think of me as a shoulder to cry on. Think of me as somebody who I'm only here because I want to help you. I have a vested interest in your success. And if at least to me, when you set it up that way, most people are very willing to talk, very willing to kind of expose their needs. And then for people like us, we need to know what they need in order to provide the right solution. And to me, that's where networking is the perfect antidote to stagnancy at an agency or at any business. That's the benefit, and that's why I invest the time and the effort, because I know when I find those right people and I give them the context within which to talk, I'm going to use what they share with me, and I'm going to come back to them with something of value, and then again, everybody wins.
Yeah, because I find that people lie in the boardroom. They get into that conference room, that meeting room, and you're talking to them, and it's either the first or second meeting, and they're not saying that. They're it's the environment's usually uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So they're just talking to you, and they're telling you stuff that they think that you want to hear.
Yep.
When you really need to hear, like, how can I fix your problem? And it's hard to admit that you have a problem.
Yep.
I mean, that's the hardest, and it's very
That's the challenge of sales and networking. If you're going after the sale, at the end of the day, unless you break that wall of fear to be open, to commit to something, to trust, obviously they got to trust you to sign anything. um, that's the barrier you got to cross. And I think networking events can help that in some cases. In other cases, I think they hinder that because they put the person so on the spot. And if you're not an overly confident person or don't like talking about yourself, like a lot of people don't, it's hard to open up. It's hard to find those
It's
people.
incumbent upon us to create the environment. To me, that's what separates a good business person, salesperson, business development person, strategy person, from the rest. If you're able, because I mean, it's awkward. There's all these people around you. You're in a strange environment. Most people are not, at their most comfortable in those settings. You're wearing a suit or a dress, and you're trying to be all proper. And I think it's an art, and I think some people are born with it. Some people, have to work real hard to attain it. But that's what I've always tried to capitalize on is, find the environment, create the context where it is okay for somebody like Jason, an introvert, or somebody who's super shy, or somebody, for whatever the reason is that they don't want to open up, be the guy that lets them feel comfortable opening up. And then when they start opening up, there's magic, and you can extract what you need to know. And, sometimes you can actually make a friend out of it. More importantly for me, sometimes you can actually build business from it.
Right.
Yeah, you never know who they know. That's the thing. I think a lot of it is going into it is like, I'm this person in front of me. And I've told people for years, I'm like, there is a person in front of you. You should acknowledge, but kind of do this a bit.
Yep.
They know somebody.
Yep.
And they could be your advocate to introduce you into that. And that's happened with us. And I've put that point blank to people this week. Like, telling us, hey, go check out this, their site sucks, is not a way I want to be introduced to a referral at all. It's not conducive to our business. It's a relationship. So I'm going to go in and basically say, somebody told me your baby's ugly. Can I help?
Mhm.
That's really, that's what's happening, So
Nobody wants to hear that.
yeah, nobody wants to hear that. But it's like, you got to think about when going into these events, like think beyond just what's in front. And it's hard to do that. It's not something that I say that's easy. But, for me as an introvert, it has helped me like learn to think more strategically when at those events and what events to go to, really. There are some that are just not worth going to, unless you're just really bored. So you got to think about that. And also, take a friend. If it's a big event, take a friend. I take Mitch.
Totally.
Yeah, we go to the, if there's what they call sometimes a business blast, we may all three of us end up like going when these return, because it's like you go talk to people there, I'll go talk to people there, I'll go there. But in my case, a lot of times, and I admit it, and Mitch has seen it, he's been my wingman. Sounds really weird at a networking event to have a wingman.
No, it's
Not
not
that
weird.
kind of wingman.
Yeah. Well, in a way you're approaching something cold, and they don't know who the heck you are. And it's always good to have another pair of ears around that hear things a little differently and catch things that you're not necessarily catching, because you're trying to think like that. They're freed up to think about whatever, like, oh, well, this is a good cocktail, whatever it is. You're thinking about like, don't screw up introducing myself. Say the name right, But your wingman's kind of like, hey, did y'all see that thing yesterday? That was a train wreck. They can do that.
Kind of like an ice, like the icebreaker that's ahead of the tanker.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You do this stuff in the environment that we're in right now. And guest Jason, have you found anything? Because we talk all the time, we kind of know what's going on our side.
Mhm.
But have you found anything from an online perspective that kind of lets you get in front of people in a successful way?
100%. Yeah. And there are a lot of events that have digitized. There's also just communities popping up all over the place. Clubhouse is a great example.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of came out of nowhere, and there are these tribes and cohorts that are forming, and in part because it is still so new, you can infiltrate those spaces and declare yourself kind of the expert of anything, or convey an interest in anything and just
Right.
get involved in those conversations. Twitter, I mean, Twitter's always been great. Recently, I wish I could plug the girl's name, but I have such a terrible memory. I can't remember who, but she started pushing out the hashtag marketing Twitter, and invited people,
Christina?
Christina. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. And somebody will put that on the screen while,
I think it's Garrett. Yeah, we'll include it somewhere.
in post-production. But
It's
it's fantastic. I mean, Christina, is giving people the courage and kind of the wherewithal to say, hey, you're part of the Twitter, the marketing ecosystem.
Right.
You're on Twitter.
That's how we got connected, I think.
Oh, that's right. That is how we got connected.
I'm pretty sure.
So yeah, I mean, stuff like that, and it's just about paying attention, what's happening out there, and capitalizing on it and engaging people through those platforms. I mean, listen, there's no shortage of avenues to meet people in the digital space. If anything, it's the opposite. There's so much, it's so overwhelming. You don't even know where to start.
Yeah, that's the key.
But you have to figure out where you fit. And, the key is really always trying to add value. Don't participate in the conversation if you're not there to add value. If you do have value to add, then I think value will come back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Events for me on digital have always seemed like overwhelming because it's sort of an introvert's worst nightmare when you log into one of these screens and you see like tons of faces that you don't even know. And, in a real environment, you can kind of take your time to work the crowd, but there they are. And you're like
all at once.
And you. So anybody throwing a virtual event, I was always taught that it's really hard to have a conversation in a room if there's more than 6 to 8 people.
Oh yeah.
So condense and try to maybe plan around that. Cause I mean, your event's going to get popular, but as you get to that 6 to 8 people, there needs to be one in the room that's sort of like the MC of that event. And if your event group grows to 12, then you need to split it off, find another MC that is in that can lead that group and meet at another time. This is a very old strategy. I won't go into where I got it from. Yeah, but it works.
It's like the mastermind, those are different from a networking group. It's that small, exclusive or
breakouts.
Yeah. So I think I've not had much success with the big networking events and people just trying to take an offline networking event and shovel it online. To your point, I've had a lot more success connecting with people and getting referrals and even, just straight up leads from marketing Twitter and those kinds of communities online, and just being present on LinkedIn and engaging with people that I, would like to work with, or that I'm confident they know people that I would like to work with. So
is that because it's more focused?
I mean, I just think for me, it's easier. I'm probably a bigger introvert than Jason. I much prefer to build kind of an online presence and an online community. It comes more naturally to me than going into a room and trying to yap myself into somebody's,
Yeah. I'm going to use that as a quote. Yap yourself into somebody's heart.
I'm not a talker, so it's hard for me to break that ice unless I'm in a sales scenario when
you have an agenda, you know what you're speaking. What's interesting to me about everything going from physical to digital is I think it's actually helpful for a lot of people. When you're going and meeting somebody face to face, whether you have to go to the office every day or you're doing a big presentation or you have a meeting with a client or you're going out to lunch, you have to tick so many boxes to make sure you appear right? It's about how you smell. It's about how you look. It's about what you're wearing.
Oh, yeah.
It's about how you've done your hair. And I think for a lot of people who, they're never going to find that sense of comfort in a physical environment. I have to believe that being able to transition everything, the whole world, like, I don't know how tall you guys are, right? I don't know what you guys look like from your shoulders down. I don't know if you're wearing pants. Something tells me at least one of you guys probably isn't wearing pants.
You can tune into our last episode, and I proved that I wear pants.
But the point is, I think it's really good for mental health. Obviously, we have a big mental health pandemic in this country. It's not just a COVID pandemic. There's lots of people, I should say epidemic, I suppose, but lots of people have been suffering in silence for so long.
Yeah.
And I think this gives people an opportunity to find ways to network and meet people without having to subscribe to the expectations that our culture and our society kind of put on all of us that we all either had to adhere to or kind of miss out on. So I think in a lot of ways, it's been really, really interesting. And I think it levels the playing field a little bit.
Yeah.
I think those online communities are, I'm sure you've all seen the Gary V interview that he's on either Fox or CNN or somebody, and the anchor's like, don't you think it's a problem that kids are spending so much time on these social network apps and they're being antisocial? And he's like, hold up. The average 13-year-old girl now has way more friends on average than she did 10 years ago. And there's value to that,
I think, in the Gary V example, I think Gary's right in a lot of ways. I think, having access to social is good for kids and for adults, but I also think the anchor is right in asking the question, because there is an opportunity cost to everything. If you don't know how to talk to people in real life and you can only communicate in a digital environment, that is kind of weird. If you are the type of person that's going to focus on everything that everybody's saying, and there's just this explosion of commentary in social media. You upload a picture as a 15-year-old or a 12-year-old, and all of a sudden 100 people have something to say about it, and maybe 90 of them say something nice, but 10 of them say something not so nice, and you're the type of person that can't handle criticism, then that's going to be a real problem. So there's an opportunity cost to everything, as Mitch was saying.
Everything in moderation.
Yeah.
Quality versus quantity.
But also the biggest thing to kind of hopefully take away from this, if you're doing these kinds of things where you're on Zoom, to what Jason said earlier, I know that below the waist, you could probably get away with a tutu or whatever floats your boat. You do that's what I always said. But at the end of the day, it's like, wash your hair, watch what you're wearing. What you're wearing is a part of your brand. That is, you're presenting and projecting something there. So it helps you, at the very least, turn the camera on. There's been a lot of times where it's like I'm talking to an icon and I'm like, I can't say, I don't know if they have a mean scowl or, I think we get away with me saying this, you don't know, maybe they have a resting bitch face and that's okay. But, turn the camera on, people want to see people. And it's sort of like when you're networking or you're doing a kind of meeting, or maybe you're doing internal team meetings for NerdBrand. I always turn the camera on. I don't expect John or any others to do that, but I try to stay as visible as possible, because if I have this off and you just see an icon, they don't really know from my tone is he mad? Right. Sometimes they don't know if I don't do that, but they may is he mad? Is he happy? Or does he have to pee? No one knows, but turn the camera on is the point. And remember that even though we're remote, it's what you're projecting and what people see that could be the most memorable thing.
Visual cues are important.
Yes. And it's kind of like what we're doing this year. Memorable brands win. And, you want to try to be that as much as you can. You don't need to be over the top, but you just want to try to project that as best you can. And I hope that for you, Jason, that we've left a mark on you that is positive and memorable for this podcast. And I want to thank you. See? I knew
that's what he's gonna walk away with.
He's gonna walk away with that podcast host is probably wearing a tutu. Yeah. No, I appreciate you coming on, man. We love having guests. We don't want to take much more of your time up, but you have anything you would like to plug? Tell people where they can find you. The floor is yours.
You can find me wherever you look for me. I'll be there. Like Batman.
Is that a song lyric?
I think that's a song.
If it's not, it should be. No, it was nice to meet you guys too. I'm always up for a good conversation. It's cool that you guys are doing this. I think there's a lot of topics that are important, and we need to talk about them, and then people can hear other people's thoughts, and then going back full circle to where we started the conversation, that's what makes people feel validated and feel heard, is when conversations are happening out there that they identify with. And I think that's one of the beauties of podcasts in general, is you can kind of create a community among people who are like, damn, I wish there were people talking about this thing that's so important to me. And that's what you guys are creating, and that's what you guys will obviously continue to do. And I appreciate the invite. Let me know when we're going to do it again.
Absolutely.
Love to have you back.
So for those listening, and depending if you're listening or if you're watching, if you're listening, you can find us at NerdBrand Agency. So it's Facebook at NerdBrand Agency, Twitter at NerdBrand Agency. John is very militant about making sure that we have the same vanity URL everywhere, which makes sense. You got to think about that. makes it easy for me to say it and not have to remember a bunch of different ones. But also you can go to YouTube, watch this. For our editor, she said last time, I forgot to say this, you can click the bell and subscribe. I probably said that backwards. I'm sorry, Alex, but she'll fix it. And it'll be somewhere around here. And we appreciate all of you listening. Appreciate Jason being on there. And I want to say to everybody, remember, keep your nerd brand strong.